Today's film begins with a man named Terenzio rushing into a bustling airport in Brussels, his face etched with panic and urgency. While most onlookers assume he's simply in a hurry to catch a flight, the reality is far more complex. Desperate for a ticket to the west, Terenzio approaches the help desk, only to discover that the next available flight is 2 hours away. Despite this setback, he purchases the ticket anyway, using it as a ruse to navigate through the terminal. Meanwhile, a well-known influencer named Ines engages in a video chat with a friend in New York. Suddenly, she chokes and collapses, leaving Ines feeling helpless, unable to offer any assistance. Outside, a crowd watches in shock as television reporters and live show hosts slump unconscious in front of the cameras. The unsettling scene continues as an entire street of people falls into an inexplicable state of unconsciousness. While many viewers consider it some sort of prank, Terenzio knows otherwise. Realizing it's time to take action, Terenzio swiftly moves towards the terminal, seizing the opportunity when a distracted guard is momentarily unaware. He skillfully disarms the guard, acquiring his gun, and commands everyone to clear a path. Hastily, he heads towards a flight destined for Moscow, set to depart in mere minutes. With only a handful of passengers already aboard, Terenzio storms the plane, brandishing his weapon and taking control. The pilot is nowhere to be found, and the co-pilot, Mathieu, adamantly refuses to assist the terrorist. A struggle ensues over the gun, resulting in Mathieu being struck by a bullet that grazes his palm. Panic ensues among the passengers outside the cockpit, but flight attendant Gabrielle valiantly attempts to maintain order. Terenzio emerges from the cockpit, urgently inquiring if there's a pilot on board. Sylvie, a retired helicopter pilot, rises to the occasion, despite her lack of recent experience. Under Terenzio's orders, Sylvie and Mathieu guide the plane into the sky, along with the rest of the passengers. The avionics have been damaged by the bullet, leaving the aircraft isolated from external communication. As they ascend, Sylvie and Mathieu make futile attempts to reason with Terenzio, but his resolve remains unyielding. Terenzio reveals a shocking truth: he claims to be an officer assigned to NATO and possesses knowledge that the others do not. He asserts that the sun's rays have become deadly, with the sunrise on the following day predicted to bring death to all, even those who remain indoors. He informs them that this catastrophe has already plagued eastern countries like Japan and Korea, and the plane will be the next target if it falls victim to the deadly sunrise. Mathieu and Sylvie find it difficult to believe Terenzio's revelation, suspecting he may be suffering from a severe mental illness. Terenzio acknowledges that he might appear foolish but insists that he's not. Meanwhile, Mathieu's hand continues to bleed profusely, posing a potential threat to their survival. Fortunately, one of the passengers named Laura is a home health nurse experienced in caring for individuals with dementia. Taking charge, she assumes the responsibility of treating the wounded pilot. Lacking a proper sewing kit, they resort to using a heated knife to close the wound, causing Mathieu to cry out in agony and further escalating the passengers' anxiety. Mathieu realizes that any protest or dissent from the passengers could endanger everyone's lives. Therefore, he informs them that they will be landing at an alternate location according to Terenzio's request before proceeding towards their original destination. Mathieu hopes that fighter jets are coming to rescue them, considering they were taken hostage. However, Sylvie has a feeling that they are on their own. Ayaz, a passenger, overhears their conversation about the sun and becomes suspicious that the pilot is lying to them. Suddenly, an Arab passenger starts coughing and collapses unconscious. Ayaz pretends to help him and seizes Terenzio's gun in the process. Ayaz instructs Terenzio to stay locked in the restroom, while Mathieu is compelled to reveal the truth. The pilot discloses that they are landing in Iceland because Terenzio wanted to go westward. Upon arrival, the local police will apprehend the terrorist, and the remaining passengers will be set free. He also shares Terenzio's belief that the sun poses a threat to humanity. This revelation causes panic among the passengers as they recall strange occurrences prior to boarding the flight and worry about their families. Mathieu calms everyone down and takes responsibility as the captain to ensure their survival. After a while, they attempt to land at an airport in Iceland but receive no response from air traffic control. As they approach the ground, they observe multiple planes crashed into one another, and people are in a state of chaos. Finally, they realize that Terenzio was telling the truth, but they are unable to land due to the blocked runway. With only enough fuel to fly a short distance west to Scotland, the captain decides to proceed in that direction, hoping for the best. He brings Terenzio out of the restroom to explain the situation to everyone. Terenzio reveals that he overheard his superiors discussing the sun but has no understanding of why it is happening or if it will cease. All he knows is that to survive, they must fly away from the sunrise. Meanwhile, the Arab passenger who had collapsed earlier remains on the floor, struggling to breathe and on the verge of cardiac arrest. In his final moments, he mentions that he had swallowed diamonds. Nurse Laura tries her best to save him but fails in her attempts. Simultaneously, they make an emergency landing in Scotland, with Mathieu stopping the plane just moments before it collides with a wall. Upon disembarking, their phones begin receiving notifications from their loved ones. The internet is flooded with news about the deadly sunlight. Half of the world's population has perished, while the rest awaits their impending doom. The airport is deserted as those with an opportunity to escape have already fled, and the remaining individuals hide in dark places, hoping it will offer protection. However, reports suggest that even people inside bunkers are succumbing to death. Suddenly, 3 RAF servicemen approach them, seeking assistance. With only 45 minutes until sunrise, they decide to gather crucial supplies and head west. Among the passengers is Yakub, an aircraft engineer. Although Yakub desires to return to his pregnant wife to ensure her safety, he is asked to prioritize the passengers' overall well-being. After gathering supplies and refueling the plane, they take off once again. One of the servicemen, who is a pilot, suggests flying away from the equator to avoid the sun catching up with them more quickly. They proceed to their next destination in Canada, where the airplane is refueled, and the radio is repaired. Sometime later, after the internet connection is restored, they receive final messages from their loved ones who had tragically passed away in Brussels. Subsequently, a passenger named Horst discovers an article suggesting that the cause of the disaster is related to the polarity of the sun. Horst, a climate specialist, explains that every 11 years, the sun's magnetic field undergoes a reversal, although the reason behind this phenomenon remains unknown. Normally, this reversal has minimal impact on the world, resulting in limited research conducted. However, over the past few decades, the intensity of the reversal has been weakening. Horst speculates that this time the reversal has become exceptionally strong in the opposite direction. If his theory is correct, the Earth is being bombarded with gamma rays wherever the sun shines, causing instant fatalities. Unfortunately, they have no means to validate this hypothesis since the scientists who published the article are likely deceased as well. Simultaneously, Ayaz comes across a news report indicating that the RAF servicemen they had picked up were actually terrorists from Afghanistan. These individuals had been apprehended and were being transported back to their country from the airport. Outside the aircraft, an argument ensues, resulting in one of the terrorists pushing an elderly man suffering from dementia, leading to his tragic demise. This incident garners disapproval from the passengers. Sylvie informs Mathieu about the news report, and they both decide to abandon the terrorists upon landing in Canada. After a few minutes, the plane touches down, leaving them with a 2-hour window before sunrise. The city is littered with victims of the deadly sunlight. The terrorists are tasked with procuring radio repair parts from the nearest shop. They reluctantly agree but insist on taking Gabrielle and Yakub with them. The problem arises as Yakub is aware of the plan, but Gabrielle is not. Consequently, when they reach the shop and Yakub blocks the terrorists in a room, Gabrielle refuses to join him. Yakub does not waste time trying to convince her and quickly heads to the airport. Unfortunately, Gabrielle is left behind in the city, as the airplane takes off without her. The terrorists pursue the aircraft and manage to hit a window with a bullet. Fortunately, it only creates a crack, so as long as the plane maintains a steady altitude, the window will not break. On the flight, there is also a terminally ill child named Dominic. Ayaz attempts to engage in conversation with him, but Dominic's overprotective mother, Zara, asks him to leave. Unexpectedly, they receive a radio signal from someone in Hawaii. Although the conversation is abruptly cut short, they assume that survivors have sought refuge in an underwater bunker, which explains their continued existence. Mathieu is eager to head to Hawaii immediately, but Sylvie considers it foolish to rely on an unclear message. Meanwhile, Terenzio becomes infuriated that the captain holds all the decision-making power. He protests, and a consensus is reached that all decisions will be made through voting from that point forward. Just as the tension begins to subside, multiple alarms sound simultaneously, indicating a malfunction aboard the aircraft. Upon investigation, Mathieu discovers that one of the terrorists, who had been tailing the plane earlier, has attached himself to the landing gear. If he remains in that location, their ability to land will be compromised. Therefore, Mathieu makes the decision to ascend to a higher altitude, hoping that the low temperature and lack of oxygen will force him down. However, he overlooks the fact that the window is cracked. Due to the pressure difference, the window breaks, causing chaos inside the plane. Objects fly around as the passengers brace themselves for impact. Mathieu swiftly brings the plane to a lower altitude, and Jakub uses a wooden board to temporarily seal the window. Everyone manages to calm down. But Dominic struggles to breathe as his respiratory tube was dislodged. Ayaz comes up with a plan and repurposes an oxygen pipe to create a makeshift respiratory tube. Zara expresses gratitude and remorse for her earlier mistreatment of Ayaz. The captain announces that reaching Hawaii on time is no longer feasible at this altitude. Instead, the most viable option is to land on Attu, an Alaskan island. Additionally, the turbulence fails to dislodge the lurking terrorist. Ayaz, Jakub, and Terenzio go to the undercarriage and create a hole in the plane's floor to get a glimpse of the terrorist. Terenzio points his gun into the darkness, but the criminal wrestles it away and nearly kills him. Fortunately, Ayaz comes to the rescue and shoots the terrorist, saving Terenzio's life. For a brief moment, Ayaz becomes a hero in the eyes of the passengers until they discover that his actions caused the death of the Arab passenger. The body is buried in Canada after a witness sees Ayaz cut it open. Ayaz confesses that he is a con artist who was smuggling diamonds from Brussels to Moscow. The diamonds were hidden inside the Arab man's body with his consent, but he died due to not following the panic instructions. Some passengers demand that Ayaz be abandoned like the terrorists, but the majority vote is in Ayaz's favor. Consequently, Ayaz is handcuffed in the avionics bay. In the subsequent scene, they land in Alaska, refuel, and prepare to take off again. While airborne, the climatologist Horst makes a peculiar discovery. The fruits they gathered in Canada lack flavor, leading him to believe that the intense gamma rays are altering the atomic structure of the food. The most concerning aspect is that this process reduces the nutritional value, posing a risk of starvation within a few weeks. Mathieu acknowledges the danger but emphasizes that their primary concern should be escaping from the sun. He has been losing control of himself over the past few hours. Sylvie suggests that Mathieu takes a rest, but he unexpectedly yells at her, displaying uncharacteristic behavior. The passengers decide to intervene, forcing Mathieu to rest and removing him from the cockpit. Although annoyed, Mathieu promises to sleep for the next few hours. Later on, they pick up another radio signal and overhear a conversation between two parties. However, all they manage to hear is the phrase Star 17. They soon realize that one of the individuals speaking on the phone is a cosmonaut in space, which surprises them, as it implies that there is communication with the control room on Earth. This newfound hope for survival prompts them to head to NATO headquarters in Brussels, where their journey began. Based on their calculations, they will have a 4-hour window after landing in Brussels before the sun rises. Therefore, they hope to gather information about the secret bunker at the headquarters, with Terenzio's assistance. Outside, Laura discovers Mathieu unconscious in the restroom. It transpires that the injury on his palm has become infected, leading to blood poisoning. This explains his previous unusual behavior. The only solution is to amputate the infected tissues, and Laura offers to perform the operation in Brussels if they can reach a hospital. However, Sylvie, without Mathieu's assistance, is unable to land the plane alone. The passengers plead with her since she is the closest they have to a pilot, but she knows she can only fly a helicopter. Horst makes her realize that if she doesn't take charge, everyone will perish. Consequently, Sylvie is shown instructional videos on how to land a plane. However, when the moment comes to put her knowledge into practice, she panics. A violent turbulence hits, and everyone braces themselves for the worst. Eventually, they experience a shaky landing, but both the plane and the passengers survive unharmed. Sylvie is applauded, and amidst the disaster, they relish the moment of accomplishment. Without wasting much time, they divide into 3 groups to carry out various tasks. 2 men stay at the airport to refuel the plane. Zara, Laura, and their group transport Mathieu to the nearest hospital, while Terenzio, Ayaz, and a man named Rick head to NATO headquarters. At the hospital, they encounter numerous dead bodies obstructing the hallways. It appears that people were informed about the deaths before sunrise and were attempting to save themselves. Laura instructs everyone to ignore the chaos and focus on saving Mathieu. Meanwhile, Zara collects medicines for her son and others, filling her bags. At NATO headquarters, Terenzio leads them to the conference room where he first learned of the disaster. Realizing they don't have enough time to go through all the documents, Rick decides to check the surveillance footage. During his absence, Terenzio mocks Ayaz's Turkish heritage, and they engage in a fight. Accidentally, Terenzio strikes Ayaz, causing him to lose consciousness and bleed profusely. In another location, Rick discovers a recording of officials discussing a bunker beneath a dam in Bulgaria, referred to as Star 17, the same term they heard on the radio hours ago. However, before he can return to the group, Terenzio approaches him and reveals that Ayaz has already departed. On the screen, Rick witnesses Ayaz's lifeless body lying in a pool of blood but is too frightened to speak up. Half an hour before sunrise, everyone boards the plane. Machu is in a weakened state but feels better after the surgery. Terenzio informs the group that Ayaz left before them but they can no longer wait for his return. Reluctantly, they start the engines when suddenly, a car stops in front of the plane, and Ayaz emerges. In the subsequent scene, Terenzio is handcuffed in the avionics bay. Sylvie informs everyone that if the Bulgarian plan fails, they won't have enough fuel or time to reach another destination. Upon landing, they must be prepared because they will only have 20 minutes to drive to the bunker's location. While Ayaz is in the restroom, he experiences a seizure, lasting only a few seconds, and attributes it to his loss of blood. However, he refrains from disclosing it to the others. When he exits the restroom, he is asked what should be done with Terenzio. Not wanting to condemn him to death, Ayaz permits Terenzio to accompany them to the bunker. After some time, they arrived at a Bulgarian airport and divided into two groups, each boarding a separate vehicle. Sylvie took the wheel of the first car, leading the way, while Ayaz drove the second one. During the journey, Ayaz experienced another seizure, causing them to have an accident. The first car had already driven far ahead, leaving the group with no way to catch up in such a short time. At an intersection, Sylvie made a right turn and came across a partially open gate. A passenger attempted to touch it and was forcefully propelled away by an electric shock. Furthermore, they discovered that they needed to continuously press a button to keep the gate open. In an attempt to make amends, Terenzio volunteered to wait for the others while Sylvie and the rest of the group proceeded inside. Before leaving, Sylvie handcuffed him to a post to ensure he wouldn't betray them. It was agreed that he would only be set free upon the arrival of the other group. Meanwhile, Ayaz and his group took a left turn at the intersection and eventually reached a similar gate on the other side of a dam. They utilized their clothing to climb over and surpass the entrance. In the end, despite taking different routes, they all reached the entrance to the bunker. The passengers were finally greeted by military personnel who warmly welcomed them inside, assuring their safety. Terenzio remained outside, alone and seeking forgiveness from God. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe for more videos.